This episode is brought to you by SRB Field Rests. Your shotgun, bow, or rifle is an extension of who you are as a hunter. Whether you're hunting snows in a muddy mess of a field, mallards in the marsh, or whitetail from a ground blind, SRB Field Rests has your back. A local Kansas company that provides an easy-to-use, simple, and ergonomically effective solution to just awkwardly holding onto your gun or your bow when you do not need to, allowing you to have more freedom, comfort, and safety in the field. Enter discount code FOWLFRONT at checkout for 10% off your order of any SRB Field Rest today. This episode is also brought to you by Oak Barn Beef, a direct-to-consumer, family-owned farm that delivers high-quality, DNA-tested, dry-aged Nebraska beef from their family to yours. You can select from a wide variety of boxes. My personal favorite is the Husker Beef package, which combines jerky, ground beef, steaks, and a brisket. These packages are perfect for families, get-togethers, out-of-town hunts, or for you outfitters looking to upgrade your table fare for your clients. Order yours today at oakbarnbeef.com.
And what's really important is that we band together, we speak with one voice.
And I was like, you sure? Because I got 2 kids, I don't want it to ruin your hunt. And you're like, yeah, just coming home with me.
Just take your time. Like I said, it would have killed a normal man, but I'm not normal, but you know.
When you said, why do you want to talk about that? To me, it was kind of like, oh my gosh, there's so many different factors that go into this decision.
Enjoy it for what it is. Every moment of it. If you're only going to shoot one duck.
Welcome to the Fowl Front Podcast, part of the Waypoint Outdoor Collective.
Hey, Fowl Front, it's Hannah from Oak Barn Beef. We're giving away a box of steaks, jerky, and more premium beef exclusively for the listeners of the Fowl Front. To sign up, head over to fowlfront.com and click on the Oak Barn Beef giveaway tab to enter into this giveaway. Thanks, and we can't wait for you to try our Nebraska-raised and dry-aged premium beef.
All right, welcome to the Fowl Front Waterfowl Podcast, and this week I have a very special guest in Rocky LeFlore. Rocky is the host of the End of the Line podcast and is what I consider the OG of waterfowl podcasts. Rocky, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. That's a large name to bestow upon me, and I appreciate it.
Well, when I think about waterfowl podcasts, 3, 4, 5 years ago, when I was listening to them, not producing them, yours was, I think, the first one that I ever listened to, and I just remember you had a consistent content stream, and I just that's what I think of.
We started out with the On the X podcast. I don't know if you ever remember that one. J. Paul Jackson and I were really good friends. He was the host of Migration Nation, which was Drake's TV show back 3 or 4 years ago. And, I'd just taken over a very popular website called Duck South. I mean, it was the second largest duck hunting website back in the old days. And partner with the guy, said, hey, you need to revive it. And podcast in 13, 14 were really, even though they'd been around probably 10 years before that, they were really, really starting to hit the scene. A lot of your movers and shakers were doing short podcast around 14 or 15. And I told J. Paul, he's so good at talking. I said, hey, we need to start a podcast. So he said, he didn't even know what a podcast was. I said, well, we just sit around on the phone and talk. He said, I'm good with that. And J. Paul is a talker. And so it kind of started there with the On the X podcast.
Yeah. So what was the point? Why were you? What was the intention?
It was just going to be another arm of marketing for Duck South. J. Paul was trying to, of course, continue his brand of who he was, the dog trainer, the TV host. Me, myself, I was trying to help reestablish Duck South because social media had just kind of shut those old waterfowling sites down. And so that was kind of the main purposes behind it. Talk to guests, bringing some of these personalities just a little bit closer to people, because I'll tell you this, man, you put somebody in front of a camera, they're different. You put them behind a microphone, it just talking, they'll open up and tell you anything.
Yeah. And what were those early episodes like? What was the style of content?
They were awful. Thank God we had J. Paul. He was such a professional at what he did, and for me and Josh Webb, it was new. It was trying to think of some of the guests we had on back in the early days. It had more of a local flavor to it back then with the On the X podcast. It was more of a Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas type of show, Tennessee.
Sure. And just so everyone's tracking, you're out of Oxford, Mississippi, correct?
I am. That's correct.
Yeah.
Home of Ole Miss.
And,
that would be a better way of putting it. Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. Okay. So before you're a podcaster, who are you, Rocky?
All right. So my story, I'll briefly kind of summarize this for you. Got out of high school in 94, basketball player, went to college on a basketball scholarship. And at this point, I guess I started duck hunting 92, 93, somewhere in there is when it really became important to me. Well, those years after I graduated high school, 95, 96, 97, I look back on them as the glory days. You know, that like our father's generation looked back on the 70s and the late 60s and the 70s, early 80s as the glory days. I look back at 94 to say 98 is kind of my glory days. It was unreal. The best way to put it was it was so good. You know, you didn't get but just a few days out. Going to college, playing basketball, you get just a few days break. You're not like a normal person in college.
Right.
So the hunting was so good, I didn't report back to practice. I reported back to practice a couple of days late. And I'll never forget walking to my coach's office. He said, "Son, you're so I choose because I'm literally getting up every morning and going hunting. Every morning we had off at least." He said, "Son, you're a choose. You love basketball or you love hunting?" I said, "Coach, I like basketball, but I love duck hunting." And that was 1st of January, somewhere in there. And that was, he didn't take it too well. He didn't take it well at all. And I left the team. And the very next year, 1997, I guided my first clients. So
that was, who were you? You did that all on your own outfit, or what?
That's correct. I was engaged to a farmer's daughter, which he owned a lot of land, and he had a lot of different salesmen, people that needed to be taken hunting. I kind of did it for free, for fun, and for tips, because it was just, I mean, some of these people leave $300-$400 for killing limited ducks. I do that every day. Jeez, that's a lot of money to a 21-year-old guy.
Yeah, it's a lot of beer money.
Yeah. So Mossy Island Outfitters was born. in 1997. So Mossy Island Outfitters we built a lodge. We had a really, really nice client base all the way up to 2016. We had a lodge. The hunting had just gotten to the point that, I just kind of looked around at my clients and said, hey, let's go to the ducks. I had about an 80% return client base, and we travel now. It's nothing on the scale of Ramsey or anything like that, but we travel all around the U.S. Chasing ducks, and it to me it's a lot more fun now. It's kind of back it's like when I first started. It's fun again.
Yeah, and you're saying, it's pretty hard to scratch out, a respectful, not just taking people's money, living as an outfitter down there in the South right now. Oh,
it's tough. It is from Missouri to Arkansas to Mississippi and Louisiana. It's been a really, really tough, I would say, past 5 years.
Yeah. And so, Mossy Island Outfitters, you guys are still in full swing. How does that? You said you travel around the country. How does that work?
So, kind of built relationships with different outfitters around the U.S. and I just utilize them. And it's been a lot of fun being able to see things that I would have never seen sitting in Morgan City, Mississippi. To wake up to a sunrise with on the Green River in Utah with a mountain in the distance and, geese and ducks pouring in. That's pretty special. Seeing tens of thousands of ducks fall into a cornfield in Oklahoma or Nebraska or Kansas. You see things that you haven't seen since, say, 97, 98.
So when you're doing the podcast, when you're starting, what was the first year you started the podcast? You said 2013?
Yeah, we started 2014, I believe, with the On the X podcast. I think it was 2014.
Okay, what's kind of, if somebody's just listened, to your most recent, I would categorize your style as like a serial type of episodic thing where you deep dive. Whereas a lot of people cover, topics. I'm topical. I pick one topic and we talk about it on that episode. But you're a storyteller. You're investigative. What drives that?
I think it goes back to my dad. Everything in life is built around relationships, whether business, personal, family, whatever it may be. How well you succeed at life is how well you can build relationships and nurture them. Learned that from my dad really early on in life. My dad did that through hunting, so it kind of transferred over to me. My dad used to host hunts. He did it for kind of a social aspect to it. So I saw that in my dad. My dad really, really put an importance on relationship with others. Like I said, success in life is built off of relationships. So if I can get somebody to talking, I don't know. It's just always been, I could communicate with people and they could tell me things that they wouldn't tell anybody else. Here lately, you take Ryan, which I think Ryan's been on your podcast before, Ryan Warden.
Yep.
Going into that, you're looking at it from a story standpoint, 2 or 3 episodes. I think that ended up being 11 parts, 10 or 11 parts with Ryan. There's so much detail. I've always, looking outward, inward, I don't know why sometimes people feel comfortable talking or telling me things, but it's been that way my whole life. Like I said, I think that I'm a good listener. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so if we go, kind of there had to have been a point where you transitioned from, okay, I'm going to have somebody on for, one episode, and then you're like, well, that just didn't cut it. Let's do another one. And kind of, what's the 5 or 6 stories lines that you kind of have had throughout, the last, half of last 7 years, 8 years?
The ones that I get the most feedback on. Let's start with mine. That's kind of where it all began. There was a lot of scandal and a great story. There's so many great stories within the story when it comes to Mossy Island Outfitters. And that's kind of where Josh Webb, which is a co-host, he kind of pushed me into telling that story, the Mossy Island Outfitters story. And when I say there's a lot of scandal, a lot of great stories, I can't sit here and go through them all. You really need to go back and listen. But that's where it kind of all started. That was the foundation of the story. And I started thinking, after I told mine, I said, new Jake story. I said, and with Jake as a co-host, Jake Latondras, I said, Jake, you really need to tell your story, because your rise to the top is really, really good. All the things that he went through. So I would say that those 2 stories, they were kind of going on at the same time. They built a firm foundation for where we are as a podcast now.
Yeah. How did you and Jake Latondras meet?
I was actually filming with Migration Nation back in 2014 out in the Great Salt Lake. And Jake was the videographer for that hunt. He was one of the videographers that was present for that hunt, filming it for TV. And he and I just hit it off. I mean, we have become really, really good friends ever since then.
So we go through the Mossy Island story, and then we go through Jake's story. What's the next one?
I think I had my best friend on, which was Troy Ruiz, which Troy and I have been friends forever. And Troy was kind of one of the founding fathers of Waterfowl TV, which to me, back in the mid to late 90s, was very important with the Whistling Wings video series. That really, people all the time want to blame Duck Commander or Outdoor TV for all these people getting in. Man, that was the original OG of outdoor video. Everybody, with the Whistling Wings TV show and the old videos, that's what brought a lot of people, got people excited about chasing waterfowl again. Troy did that story did really well. It wasn't until we did the Ramsey Russell story, which, let me just say this. There's one story to go listen to in all of these series. It's Ramsey's. Ramsey's been on your podcast, of course, but Ramsey telling about how he got burnt and making it through something he shouldn't have to be the success that he is today, and he doesn't let that hinder him. It's an amazing story.
Yeah.
He's told he's told 5 people before the day that he told how and the whole story of how he got burnt. He had told 5 people in 33 years or something. How do you avoid that? That's the thing to me. So many people were afraid to ask him about that. But one thing that was one of the first questions I asked Ramsey the first time I ever met him face to face. Man, how'd your hands get so burnt? What happened? And Ramsey always told me, he said, for the 5 people that ask me what happened, I got a great deal of respect for them. I happen to be one of the 5. So I'm proud of that.
Yeah, that was a really powerful series. And just how did you end up meeting Ramsey?
Ramsey was a part of Duck South for years and years. Ramsey kind of built his whole Get Ducks business off of the MS Ducks Duck South website years ago.
So I guess, I am millennial of waterfowl hunting. So back in the day, would you have Duck South and then was it Refuge forums? That's kind of like the pre-social media days. That's kind of what you had, right?
Yeah. The Refuge was huge back then. It was one more. It was one more because Duck South kind of fell right in between. I think Refuge was first because, they kind of had a forum for whatever state you were in. They had millions, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of users on that website back in the day.
Yeah, that's just so interesting to me because, I don't remember when Facebook came out because I think it was there. I think I was probably in high school about the time I, started getting interested in relationships and girls and all that other stuff. I think Facebook was already there. And then obviously, hunting comes along after that, and that knowledge was always there. And I remember, people talking about forums, and I know that like for sports forums, those were huge. I remember those very, vividly from my dad. But just such an interesting thing. Like, so when people, hear, what is Duck South today?
It's actually down. It's kind of interesting you asked that question. It's kind of down right now. We're swapping servers. But as far as the name and the utilization, we kind of moved a lot of the traffic over into a Facebook group. It's
that's what I'm familiar with, at least. But go ahead.
Yeah, and it's I think it's a familiar name in duck hunting now. The Duck South group. I mean, it's close to 25 to 30,000 members of that group. Which doesn't. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a decent sized group when you think about. There's not but 800 and something thousand waterfowlers now. So,
yeah, I have to check the math on that one, but
880, right at 900.
Yeah. So, I guess the one of the things I was trying to solve with people that maybe that are listening to this that have not listened to your podcast yet is to try to help them navigate all of your content. You have so many hours that you've spent and earned talking to these people and extracting these great stories. And I'm trying to figure out how I can help people navigate those stories. So, we talked a little bit. You got Ramsey's story, which is a story of basically, I mean, if I want to take a stab at this here, emerging out of kind of despair in a physical dark place and utilizing waterfowl and hunting as the way out.
Correct. Yes. Well, this couple of thoughts. So the Ramsey story, I think, is the one that really kind of put the End of the Line podcast on the map. But, we were floating around average numbers before that. Yeah, this is good. We're doing okay. But the Ramsey Russell story, it hit and the numbers doubled. The number of listeners that were doubled or tripled. And then you have the Jeff Foles and the Ryan Warden stories hit.
Yeah.
And the thing that I've come to learn, I think these story podcasts do well, but you have to have a little bit of scandal in them. The biggest podcasts that people are out there listening to these days are the that I hear from my friends are the murder mysteries or the wrongly convicted guy or the thrilling stories.
Yeah.
And
investigative journalism. Yeah.
I was talking to a guy loyal listener, two listeners in the past day or so. And I asked him, I said, hey, if you listen to any podcast lately, what do you like? Blah, blah, blah. I always try to get feedback from the listeners. And, they hadn't spent much time listening to the newer stories because they don't involve anything scandalous. They're just leaders of the waterfowl community. Yeah. And so maybe I shouldn't have put those two together. Maybe I should have kind of spread them out, not have Foles and Ryan at the same time.
No, I those are both great stories. And I'm really glad that you told the Foils one. And then I remember about a year ago, probably, or the first time I talked to Ryan Warden, I had initially called him because I saw he was a local Kansas company, and I was, approaching him for some sponsorship, and then he started telling me who he was. I initially kind of got nervous because I thought, oh, here's this nefarious guy, this, convicted dude, a poacher and all this stuff. And then we kind of had a couple of conversations, and it didn't seem like he was defending himself. And he just kind of told me what had happened. And that struck me very wow, that's kind of a crappy situation. And then I started doing some of my own research and then talking to him a little bit more. And then I decided to have him on the podcast. And at the time, I thought that was a very kind of risky thing for me to do. And so I had him on the podcast, and he told his story. And then thankfully, I think that he kind of got his message out, and I thought you did a really great job. And I just think it's a good cautionary tale for anybody entering the industry.
Well, two things I learned from the one on the Foles podcast, one on Ryan's podcast. Ryan did things that every one of us do every day. So if they busted him for what he did, they could walk into the field with any of us and bust us. Yeah, they got him on. He confessed to tagging violations. There's simple things, the whole story with the dove getting away, and and then the cripple in Jeff's podcast. A lot of times you don't think about those things. He's sitting on the back of, Ryan's sitting on the back of the truck as pertains to the dove violation. He shoots a dove sitting on the tailgate of his truck. He's at 14. Well, guy picks, one of the undercover picks up a dove, I think, puts him one over. And the same thing in Jeff's podcast. You know, a Canada goose got away, and the undercover game wardens are hunting with Jeff, and the guide that was sitting on top of the hill watching the hunt brings it back to him. You know, it had sailed 600 yards away. They had no idea that they had killed it. And Jeff's even knows that there's undercover game wardens with him. There's so many little things that with the laws that we have today, I don't think that if they want you, they're going to get you. No matter how legal you try to be, if they want you, they're going to get you. But here's the other thing. So a couple of stories that's coming up real soon is another federal duck hunting violation outfitter. And then we're actually going to have a federal game warden, one of the most notorious federal game wardens that ever put the boots on every day. And, you know, in talking to a couple of these federal game wardens, one of the things that they kept, you know how you would go into a business meeting and your focus all year at the first of the year, they give you a statement to live by? This is how we're going to do business. You repeat it every day. Well, one of the things that I got, and I noticed from when I started doing a little investigating from Jeff's story. I know I'm rambling a lot, but I don't usually do a lot of talking. But
no, you're good. You're good.
All right. So one of the things in talking to this federal game warden, a statement that he kept saying over and over and over is respect the resource. Respect the resource. Well, if you dig into Jeff's story a lot, the game warden that arrested him wrote an article about it for this World Game Warden magazine. And one of the statements that he kept using is respect the resource, respect the resource. I think that the thing that got Jeff was being the rock star that he was. A lot of Midwest guys were hanging on to, you know, he wasn't as popular in the South. And I actually talked to him about that in the podcast, but he was a very popular guy in the northern states and in the Midwest. Huge, huge popularity. And some of the things that he was doing on video, you would have to agree that it's pushing the limits, pushing the boundaries back in the day.
Of the respecting the resource?
Correct. Or just respecting the animal that you're hunting. You know, there's things that we do in a blind. Well, you know, you got a crippled bird. You slap them over the side of the boat. They're hit. Yeah, we'll talk about it on the podcast, but we're not going to do it on video and put it online.
No. That's ammo for people that don't want us to do what we do anymore.
Right. And some of that stuff was ending up on video. Well, how do you get to, as a game warden, how do you tell people, hey, this isn't right, what's going on? You cut the head off of the snake, because there's so many people at this time following Jeff's lead and his example that, you know, you cut the head of the snake. And I think that that's what got Jeff, is they didn't want to see Jeff was so big. He was the rock star of waterfowling. Well, you don't want that, because we've lost the age of mentoring from dads. I will admit that in waterfowling. People take away what they see on video or TV as their example when they go duck hunting or goose hunting. And so, you see what I'm getting at? So the way that you say, hey, this isn't right, what he's doing, is you you bust him. I think that's what happened to Jeff. That's just my opinion. Outside looking in.
Sure. I mean, that can, that also has, its ramifications. Like you were saying, kind of earlier with your thoughts on it, you said if they wanted to get you, they could. My brother does not hunt waterfowl. He doesn't hunt at all. And didn't really grow up around it, or in it, I should say. He grew up around it. And I told him, because he kept asking me these questions. There was a meme out there that said something about how a goose has more rights than, an American citizen, because a goose can only get shot at 3 times by the hunter. And he's like, is that a thing? And so we started talking about regulations, and I told him, hey, why don't you do this? Go look up the federal, we'll just stick with waterfowl and hunting. Just go look at the federal regulations for waterfowl hunting, and then go look up Colorado's regulations for hunting. And I said, do that in just an afternoon. And he's a very well-read, very smart guy. And I said, and tell me if you think that you could go out and execute a hunt and not be in violation of those rules. He texted me back about later that evening, about 4 hours later, and he's like, dude, I've been reading for like 3 hours. And he said, honestly, this is a very confusing piece of doctrine. He's like, you're right. I don't think that I could. I'd have to. This is a learned thing. Like, someone's got to help teach you this stuff. You have to read it, but you also have to be taught it.
Well, the biggest problem that people say this first. The biggest lesson to take away from Jeff's podcast, that a federal game warden, when it's all said and done, walks up to him and said the whole deal, one of the whole deals with Jeff's prosecuting that case was to end party hunting. Now, what I mean by that is whether it be 2 or 20 of you shooting into a flock of geese, that's what they wanted to put a stop to. They wanted to make waterfowl hunting deer hunting. That was the kind of one of the end goals with Jeff's case, along with kind of shutting down the machine, the rock star machine that Jeff was. And whether it's 2 or 5 or 10 or 20 shooting, I guarantee you, I could go out and find a violation. Because when that dog's bringing back geese, and you have 18 rain out, and let's just say a goose gets put with the wrong person, what you shoot is supposed to be with you. It's supposed to be placed with you. And if you film a hunt and, Larry Scoots gets put with you in a rain out, that's a violation. Yeah, there's so many little small things. I try to talk to the outfitters that I work with all the time about pile picks. Do not do it. Make it distinct. You can still take pile picks and put up videos. I would never recommend putting up a video. Ever do not put a video online. But if you're going to put up pile picks, make sure there's separation. Where if they ever question you, hey, look, see that separator right there, or tags are visible. Whatever it may be. Yeah. This day and age, it's very interesting. The social media, you can get tickets. That's anything you put out there is that's evidence, So, well, it's been like I said, it's been an interesting journey. A lot of good stories left to come. Ramsey has taken over a day. Ramsey is officially a co-host of the podcast. I approached Ramsey here about a month ago. I said, hey, all your travels, you're stopping to see all these people, flip the recorder on, make it a podcast. Yeah. And that is a very powerful tool. And that guy,
I mean, he gets around. Who are some of the other characters right now? I say characters, but I really mean people. Like, who are the big people right now that you feel are making a good difference in waterfowl?
I think Ramsey is a great person that's setting a great example. Spencer Halford is another one. My knowledge of the Midwest is growing a little more and more each year. I think Jimbo's been a rock in waterfowling for a long time.
Who's that? For the
Jim Ronquist at R&T. Most of my leanings are going to be toward that southern kind of roots, southern heritage. But I think there's some here for a while. We've had kind of social media superstars kind of leading the way to look up to. And I don't think that is a great example to see and live by. But the cream it's rising to the top in those few people that I named. I think the death of me, or the death of the hunting industry, is going to be the me attitude. I think the hunting industry is being used by a lot of people to climb an invisible mountain they think is Mount Everest, and it's really not. There's nothing there. Jake and I were having this conversation yesterday that, there's so many people trying to climb to the top, and they don't care who they step on or what they do in this industry to get there. Here's the thing, I'll just say this. The cameraman that's trying to get to Yeti, to be a cameraman for Yeti, what are you going to get when you get there? A $50,000 a year job as a cameraman just for Yeti? That ego is going to wear off in just a few months. I see so many people that are so many young people trying to run this rat race. And they kind of push people away.
Yeah, I think the pro staff thing, right? So that used to be a very, that's what you had to do back in the day.
Wow.
As a company, that's what you had to do. You had to have, little ambassadors all around the country trying to push your product, right? But I think it turned into something. And what's your take on it now?
I think it's ruined the industry. Let me say this. So you have all these people trying to be on this pro staff or an ambassador for this or part of the tribe. What you've done is for people that really, you have lowered, how do I say this? All right, so you've got all these companies giving away free product. Hey, send us, we'll send you a jacket if you send us 1,000 photos. You just gave them something for $40. It cost them $40. You send them 1,000 photos. And so as a whole, it's awful. The whole pro staff deal, what it's done to the industry, and it's great for the companies. It's bad for the industry. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was recently talking to a friend of mine who's in the waterfowl industry, and we were talking about pro staffs and kind of how it's affected the everyday hunt, right? So a guy goes out and he has a great day, has a great hunt. And then something compels him to take a photo that he needs. I need to post this to my Instagram because the hunt isn't complete until I take that photo and try, and it's passion. Everybody would love to go around and hunt and get paid for it, and get free stuff. But that's just not the reality. And I think it falsely leads a lot of people to trying to pursue that, even though it might not be something that's ultimately for them.
Man, how many times have we had this conversation about how many people have called you and offered free stuff for an advertising gig on your show? A minute ad?
A minute-long ad for something. Yeah.
Anybody that's listening to this, I'll trade out all the free stuff that's offered for me for a monthly recurring amount of money. I don't need free stuff. And that's what I mean is instead of actually paying money for what you and I as a regular business would have to pay, these hunting companies have gotten away with just giving out free stuff and they give little, but yet they get so much in return for the little that they give away instead of actually spending dollars. And that's what I mean by how it's ruined the industry. I have people, hey man, give us something on your podcast. I'll send you a few dozen decoys. I don't need a decoy. I've got a trailer full of decoys.
Yeah.
But that's the mentality that's happened over the past 10 years with the rise of the pro staff.
Yeah. Oh, I got one better for you too. A guy approaching you and saying, "Hey, I want to, let's do an episode. I want to be on your podcast." And I said, "Okay. Like, are you like wanting to market or something? Like, who are you?" And it basically like the whole conversation devolved into, so I have to pay to be on your podcast. I got to pay to do a podcast. And I was like, man, you're not getting it. Like, I'm trying to help listeners. And if you want to be a part of that, like if you want to help a listener, that's fine. But you coming on here and talking for an hour about your product, that don't cut it. Like you're not giving that much value. And and if you want to be a part of that, of me trying to help listeners in another way, you want to support the show to keep the lights on, that's money, man. I don't need a couple decals and a hoodie. I need someone to pay for this for my hosting fee. I need someone to pay for the new microphone that I want to get. You know what I mean? Those kinds of things.
Right. So. Yeah. I mean, but that's what's been ingrained into the hunting industry the past 15 years is, give away a little bit and get a lot. Man. Instead of, if we're the Chevrolet dealership down the road spending we spend $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month, you don't have to do that. That's their mentality. You may want to cut this. I messed that up. It's not like a regular business that has an advertising budget. They just, like I said, Jake says it a lot better than me. There's so many people, videographers, photographers that are trying to climb to the top, and they're willing to give away everything to find nothing. There's nothing there. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's and who does it end up hurting? It ends up hurting the hunter and the regular guy, the everyday guy. Maybe it's not respecting the resource. And I think it might be, watering down the true reasons that we're out there. I think right now it's just a little burden or a little, scuff on what we're doing. And I think the 5 stages or 6 stages or however many stages there are of a hunter. I think the social media part and wanting to be an influencer, I think that's a sub stage somewhere in there for a lot of people.
And you take somebody like Lee Chose and Jake, they have to lower the amount that they're willing to work for, because you have so many willing to give it away for free.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, Rocky, kind of basing off that, what the heck are you doing? What are you doing with the End of the Line podcast? What's the reason?
I think that I think that it kind of holds the Duck South brand together when you have a voice if not each day, but multiple times a week. People feel attached to that brand. Hadn't figured out really and truly what we were going to do with it. I'll tell you this, last year we got into, I always admit my faults, but we screwed up last year. We were very successful. We had a hunting journal that we put out, which we're going to put out again this year. But we jumped into some leather and canvas products, and we were going to, brand those products with the Duck South name. But God, whenever you start dealing with anything overseas, it just, unless you have boots on the ground, doesn't go well, and that's how it turned out for us. So, what are we going to do with it? Do I want to be the next Mossy Oak or Drake or Sitka or any? No. I want to have a loyal base of followers that will love and use a brand when the right product comes along. And I've decided that we're not going to put out anything that's not going to hold up and last a long time. So that's kind of the end goal. We will have a few products here and there that kind of supports what we're doing. But at the end of the day, the user himself or the person using the product be something they're happy with, that they tell other people about.
Excellent. What's the narrative? What's the problem that you're trying to fix right now with the conversations that you're having? What's you had Lee Chose on last week. I think it was you, Lee, and I think it was Jake. It might have been Ramsey. I can't remember. But he started talking about false narratives. And for some reason, that has just consumed me since I heard that. And I kind of wanted your take on, coming out of that conversation as well.
All right, let me say this. When it's all said and done, this series that we're doing with Lee Chose will probably be the most valuable amount of information about the industry and how it works, and about somebody that can drive a product to the top in a Lee Chose. Lee Chose is the guy that you buy. I don't think that he was a part of the Sitka brand, but he's the guy behind the scenes that has driven a lot of brands to the top. He may be the guy that the reason that you wear that Sitka waterproof jacket. He may have been behind that. I don't know. Or, I always like to use the analogy of The Devil Wears Prada, which a lot of you probably don't know what it is. I have to watch it every time it's on TV because of my wife. But you know the lady in that movie, she's the reason that you wear that sweater. You remember that part? You ever seen it?
I haven't seen it. I've seen snippets of it.
But. So anyway, he's the reason that you wear or shoot or use a product a lot of times. He gets paid a lot of money to do what he does, to drive a product or brand to the top. But he doesn't take on, he has to believe in the product. One of his projects that he's working on right now is Boss. You've seen what they've done in a year and a half. Or a year. It's unbelievable. You know, the narrative behind Boss shells, do you remember exactly what he said? 3 million ducks lost as cripples every year because of steel shot.
Yeah, it was some number that he talked about how steel shot is generating a lot of cripples.
His whole narrative behind it was he believes in Boss so much that if he can decrease that number, let's just say 10%, that's 300,000 birds that he's saving.
Well, maybe not saving, but not wasting.
Not wasting.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know, it's saving a hole or the amount of time that you're there because the shot is just that much more effective. You're in and out. You're not waiting on the next bird to come over the decoys. You're not waiting around till 11 o'clock. And so, like I said, he's that guy, that narrative. You know, he believes in a product, then he sets a kind of a narrative in place. This is how we're going to do it. And it's unbelievable what the man, what he does every day and the people that he is surrounded by. Called him yesterday. And, when we first started the series with Lee, I think that he was on a shoot with the show Yellowstone, which is my favorite show on TV. He was doing a photo shoot for them. And, he was out at the bar with, I'm losing my mind this morning. What's the guy?
That's right.
The head cowboy, the manager of the farm. He was out at the bar with him.
I haven't seen Yellowstone yet.
Oh, you got to see it.
Is it that good?
It's that good. And so, anyway, you want to know who one of the most powerful people in this whole industry that you know as the hunting industry? Lee Chose. He's that guy. He's one of the top people.
Yeah, and I don't think I really even kind of knew who he was until I think this whole Boss thing kind of came out. I don't know if he was just a behind the scener kind of guy until then, or
he was.
Yeah,
he's that smart, and I mean, he can change a company in a short period of time.
Yeah. And that's just him talking about, and then for anybody that might be a little worried about those comments and like, oh, okay, it's just a guy he's an influencer and the guy's got integrity about what he does as well.
Oh, so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, he will not get behind his product and use his capabilities in promoting a product or his knowledge about marketing unless he believes in that product. That's one of the first things that he has to believe in what you're doing. He really is one of those guys. Money, man, doesn't influence him because he knows his integrity's on the line.
Right. What do you think it's important for the everyday man, the regular hunters, like me and like us, that we kind of understand that we're being influenced, and then to try to figure out who the people that actually have integrity are that we should be listening to? I just, I think it's hard because a lot of us, we just kind of take our information at face value these days.
There's a lot of noise.
There's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of things being said, and it can be really hard to read an article or just a quick, 120 words or 120 characters, whatever Twitter is, and boom, that's it. That's fact. That I know that is a concrete truth now. And I see it a lot with talking with people about public lands and some of the, some current things that are going on with the current administration, things like that. And they take, one-liners and they take it as a complete fact. And I say, dude, like, you don't actually, the things that you're saying, you don't actually believe in that, because it's dichotomous. You're saying one thing, but you're regurgitating another thing and supporting something that you shouldn't be supporting. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have as a community, as a tribe of waterfowlers or outdoorsmen and conservationists, is that we've lost that investigative backbone to challenge what we read on a headline and just subscribe to, whatever everybody else is subscribing to.
Yeah. I think there's still a group of people in the hunting community that do not trust what they hear. There's a large group that if Tony Vandermoor says Beretta or Benelli is the best gun out there, they don't care. They're shooting it. Well, you know what? Mm-hmm. There's a group of influencers that if Remington 870 offered them $50,000, guess what they're going to say?
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to say that the 870 is the best gun, built, ever made, which is a good gun. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah. And I don't think there's not really, if you can feed your family by saying Remington 870 is awesome, and it's something that you actually do believe in, and that is, ultimately you're not selling a part of yourself, or the whole part of your trust. I mean, that's fine.
you here's the thing about it. If you're going to be paid and you're in a position that you are paid to speak for a product, you better believe in it. You better not just believe in it because you're being paid.
Yeah.
Because your integrity is on the line, and we live in a world of popular today, gone tomorrow. Famous today, gone tomorrow. I mean, it is a lot of, when I was growing up, somebody that was famous for a while. Now, it's come and go. There's really not a lot of long stay heroes anymore, even in the hunting industry. Tony, I use Tony because Tony has had a long run.
Yeah.
In terms of the world we live in today.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's been a staple for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, and then there's give you another one like Ira. Ira's one of the stories we're doing right now. Ira's not going to put his name attached to anything unless he really, really believes in it.
Can I tell you a funny reaction that I had to one of the stories that Ira told? And I'm not going to give the story away because I want people to go back and listen to it themselves. But I've never had anybody that I out loud in my truck was like, BS. And I actually said I said bullshit, and when he was talking about the bird that he killed up in Alaska. You remember what I'm talking about?
Oh, with the rock. Yeah.
With the rock. And I said, bullshit. And then I started thinking, I was like, no, he's probably, this is Ira McCauley. He's telling the truth. I'm like, what? You can't lie about that. You can't even make that up.
Oh,
But that was
Yeah.
nuts. It was nuts. I just laughed after that. I was like, that is some crazy stuff. I love it. You're calling that the Innovator series.
That's correct.
And I love that series so far. It's, I really like what you're doing, bringing the human side of in these long-term stories into kind of telling the story of what waterfowling is, because waterfowling is what waterfowlers are, that's the real story.
And you asked me, are there, yes, there's people like Ira. There's people like Lee. There's people like Jake, like Spencer, like Ramsey that will not sacrifice their integrity to promote a product. They don't believe in it. I'm telling you, every one of those guys, they are a huge influence in the outdoor industry, they will not put their integrity in jeopardy if they don't believe in something. That you ask me who? That's a group right there. Jim Ronquist is another one.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what else? What would you like to leave the listeners of the Fowl Front with?
You guys, I will say this. Ben and I have been friends for a while. I think I was one of the first people that when you started thinking about doing a podcast, you called me and said, hey, thinking about, what are your thoughts on it? I said, go for it, man. It's fun. You got to commit and go all in. I remember telling you that. And
yep.
It's one of my favorite ones out. I don't ever listen to one of my shows, but the Fowl Front, yeah. I listen to it. Trying to think, listen to Cast and Blast some, but you got a great host. There's so many little things as users that you can do to show your appreciation, because it's a lot of time built up in doing what we do. Go leave a review for him. Simple as that. iTunes. Go leave a review there for being in the Fowl Front.
Yeah. And if you haven't already, go check out End of the Line podcast, because, I really do think that you're bringing a lot of value to the rhetoric, especially with all these little series you're doing, and I just think it's great. And I remember the first time I called you. I think I called you off of the Mossy Island Outfitters website. I think that's where I found your number. And I said, this guy he's not gonna call me back. I left a message, and then I remember I answered the phone in my truck, not recognizing the number. And you're like, hey, this is Rocky LeFlore. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was so weird hearing you in my truck. Not on the podcast. And I was kind of starstruck, I think, initially.
Don't be starstruck. You and I have become really good friends. We now, maybe back then, but now Ben and I are really, really good friends. We talk on a regular basis. We bounce ideas off of each other. And let me just say, you guys have a great, great host.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. So I really do. So
I appreciate you letting me come on here, man, because this is why I let people get on my podcast and tell stories, is because you let me have open air. I just ramble and I chase rabbits everywhere. I'm like that old beagle going through the swamp, man. I just chase stuff like crazy.
Yeah, but there's a beauty in that, if your mind is the swamp, and your mind's where it's at, and there's, that's good stuff. So.
unless you have a lot of ADD users or listeners, and they're like, what the? He was just talking about this, and now he's talking about this. Where's he going with this?
Oh no, that's it. There's so many different formats out there. If you don't like this podcast, just go listen to a different one. That's really what it is. I try to, we try to bring value to people's lives, and I think a lot of people kind of think there's something else going on, or I don't know. I know it's bad. Probably for me to like say that, but it does kind of get hard sometimes when, you spend, I know for me, for every hour of content that I have, it's probably 3 or 4 hours of work.
Oh yeah.
And so it's, it gets hard to not really kind of get personal about it. And I think some people hold you to a really high standard, and that's good. And because it's good to be judged against a high standard, but sometimes it gets a little tiring, especially when you're like, well, I don't make much money off this, if at all. Yeah. But
I want to leave you with this. My final thought, and it's the most important of this whole podcast. Life and business, the determination of your success in any of those is who you surround yourself with. And I'm not talking about in the sense of the stories that we're doing on the podcast. Dude, when you got people like Ramsey and Jake and as crazy as Rob Kroom is, Mondays with Rob, but you surround yourself with good people like that, Josh Webb, that are dedicated to it as you are, you're going to be successful. And don't get me wrong, the people that we're doing stories on is just as important, but when you have people like Jake and Ramsey and Spence is coming on and doing on his own day, Spencer Halford, when you have people like that, when you surround yourself with successful people, you're going to be successful also.
Yep. I think that's a great jumping off point, and I appreciate you so much for coming on to the show, Rocky. It was really great to get behind kind of what you think and how you work, and kind of really tell in any way I feel that I'm just glad to be helping promote End of the Line podcast, just because it's such a good product and such good people behind it. So,
well, I'm sorry to ramble. I chase rabbits everywhere, but I had a lot of fun. Thank you again.
Yep, absolutely. All right, everybody, Rocky LeFlore, End of the Line podcast. Go check it out. Anywhere you're listening to this, you can go find End of the Line podcast. And Rocky, you have a good weekend.
You too, sir.
End of the Line podcast. And thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Fowl Front Waterfowl podcast. Please come join us on our Facebook group, the Fowl Front Waterfowl podcast group, where you can connect with a good group of hunters, because we're all in this together. We need to act like it so that hopefully our great grandkids will be hunting ducks over our favorite public lands. We also ask that you go ahead and give us a written review on iTunes and give us 5 stars if you think we deserve it. And we really do want to hear back from you so that we can give you the best possible content. And if you get in on that Facebook group, you can get in there and you can ask questions, and you can tell us what you want to hear next, or you can tell us what you don't like, and we'll be sure to tailor things to our listeners. So, all right, stay safe out there, and we will see you next week.